It was the perfect start for the new look Maroons. It was a jump for joy for Mount Pleasant, and it was a night of missed opportunities between the champs and Harbour View. But we got to start one place and one place only, and that's at Stadium East, where racing were too fast, too furious for Arnett. This is Match Week 1 review show. Yeah, people, welcome back to JPL Fun, and opening day of the new JPL season is already in the books, and as promised, we will begin in the heart of Kingston, where the last year's surprise package Racing United were facing Arnett Gardens. As for the start 11 for the Stallions, Ashiki Swearing gets the nod in goal despite the arrival of Aaron Enel. Captain Markovich Brown leads a three-man back line, and there's a debut for Javon Brown in the middle of the park. As for the starting 11 for the Junglists, youngster Giovanni Taylor leads the line with Fabian Reed on the bench. Talisman Rashiki Kilson had to start from the bench, and there was a debut given to young Dexter Manning after his recent arrival from Tivoli Gardens. Now, when the game kicked off, it was actually Racing who raced out of the blocks, immediately applying pressure once someone in white touched the ball. The Junglists were taken aback by this fast start, and while they tried to figure things out, Racing would take the lead. Arnett were slow to close down Richardson on a throw-in, who then delivered a perfect ball onto the head of Cunningham, whose looping header was enough to beat Wall in goal. 1-0 to Racing, and they were rewarded for their fast start. Arnett were a bit dazed after such a goal, and they would be hit once again just 1 minute later. Nikai Ellis with the nifty turn and blast from 25 yards out that flew and found the back of the net. 2-0, and a goal like this was the perfect example of Racing confident start to the match. At this point, Arnett were just desperate for a little breather and were trying to keep the ball to build some momentum, but the yellow shirt just kept coming and kept hounding them into making mistakes. And they would end up making a fatal one in the 12th minute when a loose pass was picked up by the speedy Tajay Grant, who poured his way to the top of the box before pounding his shot past Wall and into the back of the net. And just like that, it was 3-0 before 50 minutes of game time. The Junglists, the fans, and even I were all shell-shocked at this point, and new head coach Philip Williams summoned his players for an emergency meeting to try to find solutions. One was to flip Shea Smith and Ricardo Thomas to opposite wings to try a better match up against Racing wingers, and the change almost led to a goal back, but the goalkeeper's best friend came in to Swearing's rescue to maintain Racing 3-goal lead. But this was short-lived as Racing stuck to their game plan and continued to make ways down both the right and left channels of Arnett back line. They also kept up the high pressing as they would force young Dexter Manning into another fatal mistake right here, leading Racing controlling possession near Arnett's box before a delightful cross was played in by Michael Williams to find the header Cunningham, who once again nodded it home past Wall. 4-0, and the Arnett Gardens fans were unable to accept what was happening here on opening night. To add insult to injury, Wall picked up an injury on the play and had to be substituted right after. At this point, Philip Williams was determined to wrestle back some control in midfield in hopes to prevent things from getting more ugly by bringing on veteran Jeremy Nelson to provide some steel in the middle of the park. But Racing's midfield four of Brown, Murray, Bashko and Ellis just could not be tamed. Arnett ended up preventing further damage for the rest of the first half, but the 4-0 scoreline was still a bit of a shock. Second half now, and Arnett started much better here than they did in the first, but again, it didn't take long before Racing started to control proceedings once again. And somehow, they failed to extend their lead when Michael Williams robbed Joel Jones of the ball, raced in one-on-one with the goalkeeper, but failed to get his shot in the back of the net. That would be the story for the majority of the second half, where they would carve up some decent looks at goal, but unlike the first half, they failed to tuck them away. Arnett, for their part, made two more changes that saw both Fabian Reed and Rashiki Kelson finally enter the game to try to salvage some kind of consolation, and Kelson would repay his manager in the 69th minute. A simple drop of the shoulder here before a left-footed shot made his way through the crowd and into the back of the net. 4-1, and finally, the Arnett fans had something to celebrate. In fact, Kelson would go on to provide a much-needed spark off the bench as his numerous direct attacks finally made the Racing defense uncomfortable. But credit to Racing, they were so in control and so confident they kept up their energy and again carved out some big chances to kill off the contest. But they and the rest of us had to wait all the way to the 97th minute when substitute Tyrone Molynes was playing in behind, and unlike his teammate Williams, He was able to beat Adair in goal for Racing's fifth and an official end to this contest. The referee was signaled at the end of the game right after that as Racing put the rest of the league on notice with this statement victory. So we know the final score, but what about the game match stats? Well, no surprise, Racing won the possession game with 61% to Arnett's 39. They also won in the total shots department 15-10. 6 were on target for Racing while only 3 was on target for Arnett Gardens. Racing created 66 dangerous attacks while Arnett created 45. Boy oh boy, I knew this Racing team would be better this season, and while there's a long way to go, this was a near perfect start. Their speed of play, their relentless pressing, their physicality were all too much for the Junglers and should serve as the blueprint for this team's identity for the rest of the season. The only negative from this match, they were the most clinical in the second half, but how much can you really be upset with an attacking line that scored 5 on the night? As for Arnett Gardens, I did state in my season preview that they will have some growing pains as they adjust to Philip Williams' way of playing, but no one saw them being 3-0 down within 15 minutes. A lot of it were individual errors that they could attribute to team chemistry, which should improve as the season gets going. But the sooner they get Fabian Reid, Rashika Kelson and Janine Thomas on the field together for 90 minutes, the better. But for now, once again it ends, Racing United 5, Arnett Gardens 1. Now we move on to what was the curtain raiser on the night as we got a rare Portmore derby outside Portmore. First, here's the starting lineup for Dunbeholden. 35-year-old veteran goalkeeper Peter Harrison is making his debut in goal. So too was former Tivoli Gardens captain Odin Pennycook in the central defense. And finally, all eyes were on the new strike partnership between Nicholas Nelson and Stevie Barnett. As for their heated neighbours Portmore, Ramon Howell captains with regular captain Siegel Knight on the bench. Newly signed striker Peter McGregor only made the bench as well, so the young Tej Bryan led the attack. And he will be helped out by sharpshooter Ronaldo Robinson from the right. Now, when the game kicked off, it was a bit slow and lacked any fluidity as both teams were basically warming up. As the half continued, Portmore would settle quicker but weren't really finding the right combinations to break down Dunbeholden's defense. Dunbeholden, on the other hand, seemed to establish a plan of attack, and that was to find Nicholas Nelson down the left as soon as possible. And this plan led to the game's first shot on target, where Nelson squared up Tyreek Zimenez before sitting him down to get a rather weak effort at target. The shot itself didn't do much damage, but Nelson's movement did so, unfortunately, for Zimenez, who would remain down and eventually have to be substituted. Dunbeholden showed no remorse, however, and would again come down the left before Shaquem Powell delivered a good square to the back post, where it was met by, I believe, to be Turner, who rifled a good volley at goal, but he was matched well by Portmore's goalkeeper Russell. But those chances just encouraged Dunbeholden to keep up the attack, but they also had to be mindful of Portmore's counters. And they were almost caught out here when Guthrie played a delightful ball over the top for Grant, but he was crucially and bravely stopped by Harrison before he could finish things off. Unfortunately, it was costly as the collision left Harrison unconscious and the paramedics had to rush to his aid. It was a sorry sight in the end as he had to leave the game, and we pray for his safety and quick return. That lengthy break in play did help Portmore to take back control of the match, but thanks to the likes of Pennycook, Dunbeholden did well to keep them at bay until the halftime break. Second half now, and it mirrored the first half a bit. Dunbeholden looked spirited but weren't carving out any real meaningful chance, while Portmore was looking to slow the game down in their favour. Both teams would effectively cancel each other at this point, and Portmore's head coach Rudolph Austin blinked first with a trio of changes at the 56-minute mark. New signees Marcus Reed and Peter McGregor would enter the pitch, but it was the introduction of fleet-footed Carlos Benbow that would really switch things up in Portmore's favour. He would immediately cause issues down the left-hand side, keeping the Dunbeholden backline occupied for the rest of the game. But it would be the other substitutes that would play a role in finding the game's opening goal. McGregor would rob McCarthy of the ball before finding Javier Brown, who then slipped in a well-weighted pass behind the back line for Reed, who made no mistake to take home his first goal for his new club. 1-0, and you felt it was coming all this time. Dunbeholden tried to regroup, but at this point they had a hard time controlling the ball and finding their new striker Nicholas Nelson, who looked a frustrated figure. and the entire team will be left frustrated some moments after when a powerful run down the left by Benbow gave him enough time to slip in another pass behind the backline for Robinson, who expertly finished past Wilmot for Portmore's second goal on the night, 2-0. For their part, Dunbeholden tried to regroup, but it was clear their heads would drop and Portmore calmly see out the rest of the match without too much trouble. So the first Portmore derby goes to Portmore United, but how was the game in terms of stats? Well, Portmore edged possession with 53%, and they won the total shots category with 7 to Dunbeholden's 3. Portmore had 3 of those on target, while Dunbeholden had only 2. Portmore had more dangerous attacks with 60, and they also won the corners count. So let's start with Portmore United first. A good win in the end. Their defense did their usual jobs, but until the introduction of Benbow, the attack was lacking imagination. So basically, shades of what we saw from this team last season. As for Dunbeholden, well, they certainly look different under new head coach Arnett Gardens, and at points in his game, you could see what he was trying to do. I felt the strike partnership looked okay, especially in the first half, but they were too easily starved of service in the second one. At that point, they needed their own special player, like Benbow, to come off the bench and give them their second wind. Anyway, once again this Portmore derby ended, Dunbeholden 0, Portmore United 2. From the Portmore derby, we now move up north with the biggest match up of the round, where Mount Pleasant was hosting Montego United. First, the starting lineup for the hosts, well, as expected, they made several changes with another Caribbean Cup match being days away, which meant no Raheem Edwards and Captain Tule McCullough only made you on the bench, which meant Kyle Ming captains, and it's the home debut for last season's Goalie Boot winner Warner Brown. As for the visitors MoBay United, Matthew Molynes was given his debut in midfield alongside Lucas Lima. Dwight Merrick also made his debut and out on the wing, and British-born Jamari Clark will lead the line. It was a decent start by the visitors, who seemed to settle earlier than their hosts, but eventually the men in blue would settle and almost made MoBay pay for a poor pass with this free kick. They would even come closer after the Wall did his job here on the free kick, as Bailey's volleyed attempt almost caught Burton out, but 0-0 remains at this point. Right here, Mount Pleasant were the dominant ones in possession, while MoBay were the orchestrators of their own problems at the back, but Burton made up for his mistake with his point-blank save. But you felt the goal was coming, and it arrived in the 18th minute. Nugent whipped in an in-swinger towards the near post, and Bradford was on hand to nod it home past Burton for a 1-0 lead. Credit to MoBay, that goal woke them up and they started to attack with much more vigor. They just needed to dial back a little bit on the power. But MoBay were now playing football that we're used to seeing being played under Xavier Gilbert, and they were really should have done better to go into the break on level terms. Second half now, and MoBay began on the front foot once more, but Mount Pleasant was doing just enough to keep their sheets clean. But there was no ease to MoBay's constant pressure, and eventually it paid dividend. A simple route one ball found new striker Clark, who did well to bundle himself into the box before firing off a low shot to equal things up 1-1, and the visitors now had momentum. And it seems Mount Pleasant had issues dealing with Clark and a direct play from MoBay, as only 2 minutes later, the new number 9 did well by the corner flag before setting up Dwight Merrick in the 6-yard box, who needed multiple attempts to put MoBay in the lead for the first time in this contest, 2-1. Mount Pleasant did step up their tempo in response, but was having a hard time connecting anything in the final third to produce chances, while MoBay were still trying their best to put this game away, but again, desperate defending kept the hosts in the game. It was now clear that Tapper needed reinforcement to get back into this match, so he made 4 changes, including bringing Academy product Owen Jump into the match. And he would end up being Mount Pleasant hero. From another corner, a sharp pass was played to the top of the 18-yard box, and no one in red tracked Jump, who came in and took his shot one time to find the back of the net. 2-2, and you feel the sense of relief around the ground. From here, a game like this deserved a last-minute winner, but let's just say no team came close. And not long after that, the ref would draw a close to this enthralling encounter. So it was honors even at Draxhall, but how was the game in terms of stats? We got no word on possession, but MoBay edged things out in total shots 9-8. The hosts did have more on target, 6-4, 3 corners to the host team, while MoBay had 4 in return, and there was 1 yellow card apiece to both teams. So yeah, it was always going to be a decent test for both teams, but if I had to guess, Tapa would have been the happier of the 2 managers at the end. Of course, he would have loved to win, but after so many of the first team did not start and also being a goal down, he would absolutely take the point. As for Gilbert, this performance was a confidence booster, but it would still feel like 2 points were dropped after conceding from 2 corners. Honestly, they were both soft goals, but he can expect his team to get better and better over the course of the season. So anyway, once again it ended, More Pleasant 2, Montego Bay United 2. For our next game, we head a little south to a venue that never hosted a Premier League match before, and that's Turner's Oval, which will be the backdrop for Phoenix Chapelton Maroons versus Tivoli Gardens. First, the starting 11 for the Maroons. Prince Daniel Smith is the main man in goal, young Sean Layton starts in midfield, and it's a familiar strike duo of Ellis and Williams up front. As for the visitors, Tivoli Gardens, Harton reclaims his number 1 spot from Clark, Justin Dunn is back in the mix, but there is no Nikhila Fuller anywhere to be seen. Now, playing in front of their home fans for the first time, the Maroons came out flying, showing they were up for this game. And their very early efforts were rewarded in just the 3rd minute when Williams did well to send Stevens to the byline, and the youngster found his senior partner with a good low cross into the box that was coolly tucked home to give them the 1-0 lead. The Phoenix were now off and running at this point. Tivoli did respond well, focusing most of their attacks down the right, causing a few nervous moments for the Chapelton Maroons back line. But Chapelton were playing the waiting game and were looking to spring counters just like in this moment, but Harton came up big to deny Williams getting an early brace. But the game was fairly open and Tivoli was still causing trouble down the right hand side, looking to get an equalizer in the first half. And they almost found it thanks to this superb delivery from the corner that required a point-blank save from Prince Daniel Smith. He would be called into action again not long after that, when from another corner the ball found itself on the top of the box before it was fired in back on goal, drawing Smith into making a smart double save at point range. Tivoli was definitely getting closer and closer, but that elusive equalizer would end up coming from an unlikely source. When Alton Lewis received the ball here from roughly 35 yards out, it was clear there was only one thing on his mind, and it was a good thing he backed himself, as the Screamer is already a goal of the season contender. 1-1 and it's game on again. The game's tempo shot up a notch after that, with both teams looking eager to enter the break with the lead. But there will be no changes to the score at the break. Second half now, and Tivoli kept up the tempo and had a nice sighter on goal straight from kickoff. And they were in complete control at this point, playing some lovely stuff, but without the right end product, they will need to take the lead. But this is football, and we all know it can be a cruel sport if you don't take your chances. Levon Williams, who was having himself a great game, wiggled himself into some space before rocketing this shot into the back of the net. 2-1, and Tivoli can only blame themselves, as Tivoli tired and Williams almost got himself a hat-trick with this shot. But Chapelton also failed to kill the game off and thus allowed Tivoli with a glimmer of hope of getting a point, which they almost did after Nelson's cheeky attempt crashed off the bar. It would be a very entertaining finish to the game right after that, with the Maroons squandering numerous prime chances to find a third, but 2 would be enough for the first 3 points of the Phoenix era. So it was a real fun watch, but how was the game in terms of stats? Well, the Maroons shared possession with 53%, as well as total shots 16-14, perfectly showing just how open this game was. Chapelton also had 6 on target, while Tivoli had 5. 74 dangerous attacks for the Maroons, while 48 for Tivoli Gardens. 6 corners for the visitors and 3 for the home team. Okay, let's begin with the Maroons. It was a bit helter-skelter at times, but an excellent and entertaining start to the new era in Clarendon. Once Phoenix is involved, there's always a large focus on the players from the academy, but it was the core Maroon players like Malik Stevens and Levon Williams that shone brightly this afternoon. As for Tivoli Gardens, it was a valiant attempt at it, especially when you consider their bench only had 2 active players on it due to many players still haven't been registered yet. In fact, if they only had taken their chances when they were in control, they may be the ones here celebrating this afternoon. For now, it's a first day defeat as this one finishes Chapelton Maroons 2, Tivoli Gardens 1. So from Clarendon, we keep moving west to St. Elizabeth for a rematch of last season's Tier 2 finals. Newcomers Treasure Beach were the home team, and this is how they lined up. Former Tivoli player Shaquille Jones made his debut. Former Humberline player Karim Bryant did so as well in midfield, and all eyes was on new striker Ryan Porter up front. As for their fellow newcomer Spanish Town Police FC, Christopher Wisdom gets the nod in goal. Chevron Walters is their captain at centre back, and keep an eye out on 31-year-old striker Jordan Elliston, who's wearing the number 10. No, it was an energetic start by the home team, but it was the visitors who started the early pressure with a series of set pieces that made life for Morgan and his defenders a little uncomfortable. The flow of the game after that was a bit hectic in nature as both teams struggled to have any real sustained spells of possession. But it was Police FC who created more dangerous chances, like the shot from the angle by Ferguson that was parried smartly by Morgan over the goal. But the home team would fire back with a massive chance of their own when Wisdom came and flopped at this corner, but the header somehow missed the gaping goal. But at least some encouragement for Treasure Beach, who started to now control possession and started to look more at ease at this point. But ultimately, this free kick effort from Harris and this header from Porter was the closest any team got to finding the opening goal in the first half. 0-0 at the break. Second half now, and Police FC actually looked more aggressive out of the locker rooms, but again, nothing was on target to worry Morgan in goal. But it would be Porter and Treasure Beach with the best chance of the half, but again they were denied at the doorstep by the onrushing Wisdom to keep the scoreline level. The newly signed striker would again be in the thick of things a few moments later after he found himself in behind with his gorgeous pass, but while his shot beat Wisdom, it unfortunately hit the upright instead, and Police again survived to fight another day. That was one of many massive opportunities for Treasure Beach, who failed to take them in the game, and they must have been wondering if this was just not going to be their day. But then up stepped the debutant Shaquille Jones, who latched onto this pass that luckily evaded everyone into his path, and he made sure not to miss this chance as he squeezed his shot past Wisdom to finally give the home team the lead in the 64th minute, 1-0. The goal gave Police a little extra boost in their play as they felt a sudden sense of urgency to get back into the game. But Treasure Beach remained largely in control and always looked the more likely to find the game's second goal. It would eventually come late in the injury time when another debutant, Daniel Hardy, powered his way into the box for calmly slotting his shot past Wisdom and into the back of the net for his team's second. 2-0, and it was richly deserved based on the run of play. The game would end right after that with Treasure Beach collecting all 3 points. So let's begin with the home team. It took them a while to settle down after a nervous start, but eventually their superior quality brought them through. Shaquille Jones was especially outstanding and deserved his man of the match accolade, but they also missed way too many opportunities, and against their better teams, they will need to be more clinical. As for Police FC, it was a good start. They caused some trouble, but they faded by the 58th minute. They showed hard to keep things close for as long as they did, but they will need to improve quickly to stick around in this league. But for today, it remained Treasure Beach 2, Police FC 0. Now we head all the way back to Kingston at Stadium East for a rivalry match between Molynes United and Waterhouse FC. In terms of the starting lineup for Molynes, Tyrese Brown is the new man in goal. Former Umberline captain O'Day Murray makes his debut, and current Molynes captain Jason Wright is healthy to lead the attack. As for Waterhouse 11, it was Chris Paul and Elvis Wilson in central defense. Alexander Bicknell got his debut, and Colorado Murray gets his second debut to lead the attack. Now, when the game began, it was a confident start by Firehouse. They took aim at Molynes' right side of the fence and got some good crosses in from that side to cause trouble in the box. But the first goal would come from the Molynes defenders completely falling asleep on the job. The short corner caught them napping, and Mario Sims was absolutely free to nod home such an easy goal. 1-0, and Waterhouse were well rewarded for their fast start. Molynes themselves were struggling to find Jason Wright up front, so Waterhouse, obviously being the kind people they are, decided to give him a helping hand with his misplaced back pass that Wright almost made him pay for, but Chris Paul was at the right place at the right time. But that sequence gave Molynes the confidence they need, and now they started to have a few looks in on goal, but they failed to test Hakeem Bernard. While defensively, they looked all out of sorts, almost giving Waterhouse another easy goal to double their lead. From here, we got a decent game of football as both teams looked to keep possession, but the spectacular attempt from half-line by Denard Thomas was the closest we got to finding another goal before halftime break. Second half now, and again Waterhouse attacked the right side of Molynes' defense early and produced a chance from doing so. But the second and decisive goal would actually come from the other side. Murray, who was having a decent game up until this point, saw a small opening to take a crack, and that he did to get his first goal for the club since his return in the off-season. To their credit, Molynes didn't hang their heads about and should have had a goal back after Livingston did all the hard work to tee up Tyree Wilson at the top of the 6-yard box, but the number 9 somehow missed the target. Perhaps sensing a small chance for Molynes to get back into the match, Waterhouse effectively took their foot off the gas and practically played the remainder of the match at their speed. It worked as Molynes didn't produce much from there, and Waterhouse would pick up their first 3 points of the season. So a comfortable win for Firehouse, but how was the game in terms of stats? Waterhouse will lead the way in total shots with 9 compared to Molynes' 4, but they were actually dead even with shots on target with 2 apiece, 5 corners to Molynes while 4 corners to Waterhouse, and they were dead even on offsides. So let's begin with Waterhouse. They look exactly like the team towards the end of last season, and that's despite Andre Fletcher not playing. They look totally in sync, and newcomers Murray and Bicknell look like the perfect additions to the squad. There were still 1 or 2 hiccups in defense, but it was a calm and professional performance by Firehouse Nation. As for Molynes, it's a bit scary, but they look exactly like last season's version. They look void of ideas for far too long in this match, and the defense still looks shaky at this point. The good news, it was only round 1 and they have plenty of time to get it right. But for today, they got it wrong, and once again the game ended Molynes United 0, Waterhouse 2. Now onto our final game as defending champs Cavalier took on a team they failed to beat all of last season, Harbour. We will begin with Cavalier starting 11. Dara is Lang's new partner in defense. Shaquille Stein is back to strike up top, but there was no Forbes or McKenzie in the team just yet. As for the stars of the East, Graham is the new number 1, Dyer gets his debut in defense, and Ron Brown captained the squad on opening day. Now, when the game kicked off, Cavaliers started brighter. They were looking to corner Harbour in their own defensive third, and for all those who like criticizing Cavalier for playing too many aerial balls, well, they were zipping the passes around here in the first 10 minutes. Then disaster hit. Watson got the ball in the middle of the park first, but his follow-through got the Harbour player high in the knee. The referee deemed that too dangerous and issued a red card, and just like that, Cavaliers' momentum was cut in half. Harbour did get a foothold back in the game after this, but Cavalier would be the ones to create the better chances, including this cross right here for Stein, but he just missed contact with the ball. The stars of the East were trying to make their man advantage count, but while they had more yellow shirts in the final third, they were lacking the required creativity to truly unlock the Cavaliers' defense. They had to rely more on long-distance shots to give Jadine White any work in goal. And whenever they found a way through, Lang was alert and was quick to snuff out any real dangers. Such defensive work was present in both boxes, and thus the first half would end scoreless. Second half now, and it's seeing Coach Ruler Speed decide to roll the dice a bit by having Richters a bit more central and closer to support Stein in the attack. They also reverted to their initial game plan to push their lines higher and again look to corner Harbour in their own defensive third. But the stars of the East handled it well and were now finding space down the flanks to exploit and carve up some good looks and goals for themselves. But they really should have been a goal down midway through the second half after Stein latched onto this route 1 ball, made his way into the penalty area and got it shot over the unrushing Graham, but the shot lacked conviction and was cleared off the line. chances like those Stein normally would take. He would get an even better chance moments after when quick thinking from a free kick allowed Chad James to stand the ball up to the back post, finding both Stein and Leng free, but they got in each other's way and the chance went begging. After that, it was a Harbour show as they created some glorious opportunities of their own, but their finishing was just as bad on their end. But the final play of the game was the worst offense of the night. Cavalier pushed way too many players forward for a free kick late in the half, and Harbour managed to spring a counter up the pitch before the ball fell to Rowan Brown in behind, who then rounded the keeper but somehow missed the target with the empty goal gaping. It was a big let-off for the champs, who were glad to hear the referee final whistle not long after that. So in the end, it was scoreless, but how was the game in terms of numbers? No surprise, with the extra man, Harbour won the possession battle, and they eventually won the total shots count 11-6. 4 of those were on target for Harbour, while all of Cavalier's shots missed the target. 71 dangerous attacks for the Duncan Destroyers and 69 for the Stars of the East. Yeah, so let's begin with Harbour, a real solid display, especially in defense, but they must be having nightmares about Brown's miss at the end. They will be disappointed not to win after being a man up for so long, but again, a very solid start to the season. As for the defending champs, they had their chances even being a man down, but given the circumstances, I guess they would take the point. Also, it was a clean sheet, which bodes well for this new defensive partnership after Richard King's departure. So, some positives for coach Rudolph Speed heading into a crucial Caribbean Cup match on Thursday. So, again, here are the results of match week 1, with that racing result against Arnett Gardens being the obvious headliner. But we are only just getting started. We got 38 more rounds of action to review for you guys, so please like, subscribe and share as we look to keep you all up to date on everything in the Jamaican Premier League leading up to the final in May. Otherwise, with great JPL content, you're already at the right place, Jamaica Fun. YouTube, pick up yourself.